Hi, parents, and welcome to another episode of The Parent Guide, helping your teen overcome pornography addiction. I am your host, Matt Bulkley, and if you're a parent who's navigating the tough waters of your teen's problematic online habits, namely pornography addiction, you are in the right place. We're here to help you cut through the confusion and to arm you with science-backed insights and direction. And most importantly, to remind you that you're not alone in this, that you've got support from this podcast, from other parents that are struggling with this same issue with their teens. And today, we are expanding on one of the most requested topics that we receive from our YouTube channel, and that is how pornography hijacks your teen's brain, and specifically the oxytocin trap. And if you caught our YouTube video, you know that this is a game changer. And here on the podcast, we are going to go deeper with more science, more stories, more tools to help you and your teen to rebuild those vital connections. Whether you're listening on a commute, if you're out walking, if you're doing housework, folding laundry, settle in, take a deep breath, and let's dive into this topic. And parents, you've got this. Let's kick things off with some basics. What is oxytocin and why should it matter to you as a parent? Oxytocin is often called the bonding hormone or the cuddle chemical. It's this incredible neurotransmitter and hormone that our brain releases during moments of genuine connection. Picture this: your teen hugs a friend after a tough day, share a laugh at the dinner table with the family, or even pets the family dog, and boom, oxytocin floods in, creating that warm, fuzzy sense of trust and closeness. It's like the brain's secret sauce for building relationships and connection. And for teens whose brains are in overdrive during the formative adolescent years, oxytocin is essential. It's wiring up the prefrontal cortex, that part of the brain responsible for emotional regulation, empathy development, and social bonding. When the oxytocin system is not working, this impacts your teen's ability to form healthy, appropriate connections and relationships with other people, which is such a vital part of adolescent development. In the field of psychology, there is a psychological theory. It's been termed the psychosocial stages of development, the 8 stages, psychosocial development, by psychologist Erik Erikson. And in this theory, Erik Erikson talks about different stages of development, and there's a very crucial developmental stage in young adulthood called intimacy versus isolation. And this is that stage of life where a young person has to be able to develop the capacity to be vulnerable and intimate in order to form a relationship, a romantic relationship, a marriage relationship. And in the precursor stages, particularly in adolescence, if their trajectory gets off kilter, then it really does impede their ability to effectively navigate the challenges of young adulthood. And this is really what we're talking about: is pornography addiction and oxytocin disruption can really cause problems in young adulthood. And that's why we want to intervene early during adolescence to make sure that the oxytocin systems of the brain are working appropriately as a teen approaches young adulthood. And so intervention now prevents problems in that intimacy, relationship issues during that next phase of life. There's a study conducted in 2017 in Nature Reviews and Neuroscience that highlights how oxytocin helps teens learn to navigate peer dynamics and romantic feelings, things like turning awkward crushes into meaningful attachments. And without it flowing right, those connections can feel, well, they're just off. And here's the twist, and it's a big one. Pornography, it doesn't just sneak in, it literally hijacks this system, the oxytocin system, that capacity to create healthy connections with other people. When your teen watches pornography, their brain simulates intimacy. The visuals, the sounds, it tricks the body into releasing oxytocin, just like a real hug or a heartfelt talk or a face-to-face connection. But unlike a real connection, there is no reciprocity. There's nobody on the other end to hug back, to share vulnerability, to connect with, or to build trust with. It's all one-sided pixels on a screen. And drawing from the study we referenced in the YouTube video, the 2023 Psychology Today article that I mentioned in that video, creates what is called the oxytocin trap. Over time, the brain starts creating that quick oxytocin hit from a screen because it's easy, instant, and judgment-free, requires no vulnerability. There's no risk involved. 2022 study in addictive behaviors backs this same concept up. They scanned the brains of young adults with heavy pornography use and found elevated oxytocin responses tied directly to their viewing habits, but with blunted responses to real social cues. So, in other words, it's like training a little puppy to beg for treats from a vending machine instead of learning to play fetch. Sure, it works short term, but it skips the joy of the real game. So let me share a quick story to make this real. I once worked with a mom. I'll call her Sarah. Of course, I always change names for confidentiality's sake, but Sarah, whose son, Alex, was 16 and starting to pull away from family dinners and previous participation in sports, and turns out that he had been deep into pornography for well over a year before she discovered it. And she talked about that he just seemed numb, is how she described it. And here's the thing, that numbness, it was his brain starting to get rewired, associating those bonding chemicals, that need for connection, with isolation rather than the lively chaos of real life relationships. And it's so heartbreaking. But here's the thing, it is fixable. And we're going to get into how it is fixable. Let's start with why. Why does this hit teens so hard? Well, remember the concept of neuroplasticity. Their brains are plastic. It's like a moldable, warm clay. A 2021 study in the Journal of Adolescent Health shows that adolescence is a peak window for emotional circuit formation in the brain. And if porn's flooding that system with synthetic oxytocin, then it crowds out the real stuff. And here's the thing, real connections require effort, and it's things that sometimes we overlook. It's eye contact, it's shared laughs, it's face-to-face connections, it's learning to navigate disagreements, it's learning to resolve conflicts. And porn requires zero effort, and there's an infinite supply. So fast forward to the fallout on that. The reference in the video as well, the YouTube video, a 2018 Frontiers in Human Neuroscience study reveals how heavy pornography use alters the brain's reward pathways, making genuine intimacy feel less rewarding. And that's where talking about that numbness. And it's not laziness, it's the neurochemistry. So your teen might ghost friends, they might fumble dates, they may show a lack of interest in dating, face-to-face connections, and they may even become irritable. They may snap at you more frequently because their brain is defaulting to the screen for that emotional high. And let's not forget the study in Neuroscience and Biobehavioral Reviews from 2019 explains that natural oxytocin from touch, like even things as simple as a high five or pat on the back, build lasting trust and connection. Porn's version, though, it's a solo spike that fades fast, and then it leaves the teen chasing the next hit and feeling emptier each time that cycle plays out. Expand that into daily life as a teen. A teen, they might ace a school project, but struggle to feel good about it, to have any sense of accomplishment about it. They may struggle to celebrate with friends because the win, it just doesn't trigger the same buzz that they get from the screen. Or they may enter into a relationship, but then pull back at the first signs of vulnerability or risk because they're wired to avoid the messiness of real connection and bonding. It's safer. There's less risk involved. It doesn't have the same level of high that they get from pornography. And this is a silent epidemic. According to a recent study from 2024 from the American Psychological Association, over 60% of teens report some level of digital intimacy interference, with oxytocin dysregulation as a key factor in that. All right, parents, we've unpacked some of the neuroscience, some of the studies. Now let's jump into the emotional side of this issue. This trap, it doesn't just rewire the brain circuits, it tugs at the heart. And that 2021 the Journal of Sexual Research study that links heavy pornography use to a 25% drop in relationship satisfaction among young people, often because the brain literally desensitizes to subtle real world signals. Things like a flirty smile, a deep conversation, boring compared to the screen's intensity. And this often spirals into loneliness, anxiety, or even full blown depression, where nothing in life becomes fulfilling or satisfying. And what you see is the teen begins to isolate. They start that pattern of scrolling late into the night, only to wake up the next morning feeling even more disconnected and more depressed and more hollow. I've heard parents, like one dad's client named Mike, who's talked about his son had started to withdraw from sports and had talked about that soccer practice was no longer fun anymore. It's, in processing that with parents, it's not rebellion. It's that the oxytocin system has been tricked and hijacked and circumvented into the youth bonding with fantasies over real people, over teammates, over friends, over family. And yes, it ripples down to you, your relationship as a parent with your teen. The talks become shorter. Your teen becomes more quickly irritable. It's where you get the eye rolling. It's where it feels like that there's a wall between you, a disconnect. But parents, this is where your role is so vital, because you are the bridge back to that real connection, helping your teen to reconnect and to start to recreate the oxytocin systems that need to be in place in order for them to resume normal adolescent development. So let's talk about action. You're not powerless, but as a parent, you are equipped. Building on the 4 steps that I introduced in the YouTube video, I want to flesh them out with some examples, some science, and some role play ideas that you can try at home with your teen. And most importantly, remember, progress over perfection. The reality is that recovery in most cases is a long-term process. And so I emphasize empathy and patience in this process. So step 1, start the conversation and do it gently and do it frequently. Is it awkward? Yes, but that's totally normal. Research from a 2020 pediatric study shows that open talks reduces shame and boosts a teen's help-seeking behaviors by 40%. So here's the thing: approach it with curiosity. Say something to the effect of, "Hey, I've been reading about how the online world can really mess with our brains." Anything like that hitting you? So avoid lectures, just a safe space. So as far as role play goes, maybe it's something like this. Imagine your breakfast with your teen, and you just simply say, "Hey, I saw this wild article about brain chemicals and screens. Made me think about how connected we all feel or not. What's your take on that?" And then listen. And if they shut down, that's okay. You've at least planted the seed, and then circle back to it. And a follow-up tip there is for use, make sure that you're doing this weekly, like a no judgment check-in. Do it informally over ice cream or a treat. And as I talked about, open and ongoing communication is vital. I mean, it literally is the key to progress. You've got to continue to approach this. Got to get to that point where your teen can communicate honestly and openly with you about this. So step 2 is encouraging real life bonding activities. We've got to reboot that oxytocin in a natural way. Back to that 2019 study that I mentioned, it proves that shared physical activities like hiking, walking, baking, together time spikes oxytocin 30% more than solo screen time. So we've got to get your teen off of the screen, off of being isolated, off of being alone. Need to help them begin to foster trust again. And so get creative, but whether it be family walks, family hikes, family board games, something that creates laughter, something that creates excitement, something that creates endorphins in the brain. Help your teen find maybe a pickup basketball league or some type of sporting activity that involves teamwork or even volunteering. Animal shelters are great. Pets are oxytocin gold mines. So one of my parents talked about what she called the Touch Tuesdays with her 14-year-old, and there's nothing weird here. This just simply involved her putting more deliberate effort into a touch. One day a week where it was high fives and hugs on that day. And within a few weeks, her teen started to open up more about his struggles. Parents encourage face-to-face friendships. Support your teen's efforts to develop in-person friendships, relationships. Make sure that you're helping them to stay connected. Sponsor activities at your house. Encourage them to bring friends home. Help them to go out on weekends. Help them to participate and attend school activities, sports, music, anything that involves connections, relationships with other people. So, assignment parents, I want you to pick one low pressure activity for this week, something that will involve you encouraging your teen to be in connection with other people, something that will help them to feel natural oxytocin. And science says it will start rewiring those pathways. Step 3, set healthy screen boundaries and do it together. And emphasize it's not punishment, it's protection. There's a study from the Journal of Adolescent, or the Journal of the American Medical Association, JAMA, from a pediatric study in 2021. The study found that collaborative limits cut problematic use by half, which helps in restoring sensitivity to real oxytocin triggers. So co-create rules together with your teen. Work on setting parameters for tech curfews, what time that would be. Maybe it's no screens in bedrooms after 9 o'clock. Maybe it's researching and identifying some apps that can be good for filters or for blocking certain websites, or accountability partner apps. Maybe it's finding the best kind of electric docks or electronic charging stations that you can put in the kitchen or in the hallway so that everybody disconnects from their electronics and charges those things at night. So as far as role play goes, what about something like this, where you simply approach your teen and you say, look, what if we team up on this? You pick one boundary, I'll pick one. Maybe it's something like no phones during dinner. Does that sound all right? Make it fun, and reward a week of wins with that, with eating out together. And then following up, tracking the wins in some type of shared journal to help build momentum. And of course, this involves you as a parent showing appropriate management of your own technology use. You lead by example. You make sure that you are showing responsible behaviors with how you interface with technology. And then lastly, step 4, model and teach emotional resilience. As we know, and as we talk about so often, porn use is so often used as a form of escape from pain. Porn often masks the pain. So we want to equip teens with tools to learn to manage that emotional pain through healthy ways. And so this would involve things like involving your teen, introducing your teen to mindfulness activities that boost oxytocin via self-compassion. Per a 2023 mindfulness journal study, teach them to live in the present. Help them to recognize what they're feeling in the moment, and then to be able to communicate it rather than keeping it in. Too often, what we find is that our teens struggle to identify what they're feeling, and they keep it inside. They stuff it. And we want to help them learn to recognize what they're feeling and to be able to communicate that effectively. And there are some great mindfulness apps that you can download that can be helpful, that also reinforce the idea of things like just being outside, being in the sunshine, feeling the fresh air, feeling the breeze, walking, running, jogging, hiking, exercising, pushing them to do things that elevate their heart rate, that trigger the endorphins in the brain, that provide us kind of those natural highs. Things like teaching deep breathing. Breathing is so important, and being able to just simply introduce things like breathe in for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. And there's great apps even for teaching breathing, to just have your teen take 5 minutes a day and work on breathing, which helps to stimulate brain growth, oxytocin, the rewiring of those reward circuits in the brain. Encourage your teen to journal, and you show the example by journaling yourself, where you practice asking yourself, what made me feel connected today? Helps them to strengthen their capacity for being introspective, for recognizing what they're feeling and being able to express it. I think so many of teens that I've worked with that in a way that their capacity, their metaphorical muscle for emotional expression is pretty stagnated or underdeveloped. And we want them to learn how to recognize what I'm feeling and then to be able to express that. Another really good idea as a parent is to show affection in your own relationships, in your marriage, in your friendships, in your interactions with other people. Hugs, physical affection, kind words, I appreciate you, kind notes, simple things like even eye contact, high fives. All of those things can help to reset oxytocin and getting it through the natural way. Remember, teens mirror what they see. So, for example, as a parent, when stress hits you, say it out loud. Talk about, "Ooh, this was a tough day. I'm going to breathe and I'm going to get through this and I'm going to talk about what I experienced." Lead by example. Talk about what you were feeling and express it. And it shows your teen how to be emotionally resilient. Over time, they will internalize resilience, which breaks that porn crutch, which breaks that dependency on seeking out pornography as a form of escaping negative emotions in their life. Well, parents, there you have it. 4 steps layered with do's and how-tos. And start small. 1 step this week can be the beginning of changing this whole circumstance. Before we wrap this up, let's tackle just a few questions that have come in from the YouTube video on this, submitted to me via email, and I want to just hit on these. And if you have questions, there's any questions or topics that you would like for us to cover, hit me up with those and keep them coming. So question 1 comes from Lisa in Texas. Says, my 15-year-old denies any issues with pornography, but I see the signs. How do I push without pushing him away? Well, that's a great question, Lisa. And remember that step 1, lead with empathy and patience, not evidence or not seeking out punishment or consequence. Empathy and patience are so important. So try something like this. I say, I noticed that you've seemed down and disconnected lately. And I'm here. If it's screen stuff or anything. A 2022 family process study shows that approaching it with empathy, opens doors 70% more than a confrontation or a punishment. So confrontation and punishment drives the behaviors underground. It leads to more secrecy. It leads to more sneakiness and denial. You have to create that safe space for your teen to be open and honest with you. And the thing is, if denial persists despite evidence and you're just not getting that breakthrough, then maybe suggest a neutral third party like a therapist or a counselor. And remember, you're planting seeds, but you can't force the growth. Question 2 comes from David in California. Asks, what about if it's affecting their grades or sleep? Do I need to seek professional help? I absolutely validate that worry, David. And if it is disrupting daily life, yes, professional help would be recommended. And here's the thing, early intervention is always a good idea. Rather than ignoring the problem or hoping that it will somehow resolve itself, getting your son connected with a therapist would be a really good move. And best practice would be finding an in-person clinician in your community and definitely introduce to that therapist the recovery Toolbox for teens to see if they would be willing to use that as a supplement to the therapy. The Recovery Toolbox for Teens, which is the Breaking Free workbook for teens, the Breaking Free Parent Guide, and the 101 Tips for Quitting Porn. Great resources that can be used with any outpatient clinician. We use it both in Star Guides and in our outpatient clinic, and you can use it as a parent, your home. You can use it with a therapist that you find or a pastor in your community. And if you're in St. George or Southern Utah, then certainly here at Therapy Associates in St. George, we have several clinicians in the office who specialize in treating teen pornography addiction issues, and we're always happy to jump in and try to help you and your teen to get a recovery rolling. So hit us up with that. And then finally, a final question comes from Maria in Florida, who says, how do I handle my own guilt as a parent? Did I cause this? And here's the thing, Maria, our hearts go out to you. And no, you didn't. You did not cause it. But guilt is common among parents. There was a recent study, a 2024 parenting science review, that debunks the whole bad parent myth. Because here's the thing, screens in 2025. Screens are everywhere, and brains are sneaky, and particularly teen brains are so vulnerable to addiction. And unfortunately, pornography addiction in teens happens in even the best of families, and even among the parents who have been hypervigilant and have utilized textbook parenting. So forgive yourself. You do not need to be hard on yourself. In fact, the opposite. You need to be sharp and emotionally resilient yourself. So don't take on unneeded emotional burden. Instead, focus on the present here and now and how you can support your teen in a successful recovery. Journal your wins as a parent. In fact, that helps you to rebuild your own oxytocin. You've got wisdom to share, and lean into it. And don't beat yourself up, but make sure you're on top of your game to support your teen's recovery. So parents, here's the truth. Your teen's brain is literally a marvel of adaptability. As we've talked about, that neuroplasticity means that those hijack pathways, that they can heal with time, with connection, with unwavering support. And remember, it's not overnight, but every hug, every honest talk, every friendship, every connection, every real relationship, every face-to-face connection, every boundary honored is a step towards finding that real joy and connection that comes from natural oxytocin as opposed to the oxytocin hits that come from pornography. So recovery takes time. Be patient. Celebrate the small wins. As you approach your teen with empathy and patience, you literally are going to be the hero in this story, walking alongside them. And I just want to emphasize, so many teens learn to manage the addiction, and they go on to live fulfilling, meaningful, productive lives as parents and husbands. So I want you to be hopeful. I want you to be positive. I want you to be optimistic. But I need you to be patient. I need you to show empathy for the struggle. Parents, if this episode resonated, share it with a friend who is in the trenches. There's probably many more people that you know in your circle who are struggling with the same issue. Your voice could change their journey. So subscribe to future podcasts wherever you listen for more tools, more ideas, more research, more support, more resources. Visit our parent library on the therapyassociates.net website under the blog, where we have 200 plus tips, strategies, research designed to empower you as a parent to help your teen in this recovery. And as I mentioned, make sure that if you don't have it, to get that recovery toolbox for teens. Again, on the website, therapyassociates.net, click into the bookstore, and it is the blue recovery toolbox, which is for teens. The brown one is the adult version. So parents, thanks for being with me today. I'm Matt Bulkley. Thank you for trusting me with your story. And until next time, keep connecting, keep hoping, and you've got the power to help your teen rewrite this chapter.